Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mic Check
2.
My name is Rachel.
I'm Sean.
Troy, is Sean too far away from his... Before we go, because I can't today. All right.
That better?
Let's start over from the top. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mic Check
2.
My name is Rachel.
I'm Sean.
And today we are joined by the lovely, one and only, drum roll it up, please, Miss Charlotta Carter. Woo! The fans go crazy. I think this has been your
Third.
Okay, I feel like it's like your 16th. You're like a pro now.
Aww,
We're just going to roll you up a chair and have you here with us forever and ever and ever and ever.
And ever.
But for some of our listeners who may not have seen the other 2 episodes you were on, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Charlotta Carter. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I work here at St. Hope.
Nice.
All right.
And that just leads us into our topic. It is one that is a little bit more serious today, but it definitely needs a lot of attention because it's such a huge issue going on in today's society. So we're going to be talking about suicide awareness today. This is kind of a piggyback part 2 because
We went over it actually last year, this exact same time. And since we had a lot to talk about, we wanted to bring Charlotta back and just go a little bit deeper into it. And then if anyone still has questions or concerns, maybe we can guide them in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely.
they
Thank
can
you for
talk
having
to.
me back again.
Yeah. Troy, before we get started, I can't hear anybody in my mic, so I don't know if that's... But is everything still okay?
Oh, Rachel.
I can't hear y'all. I don't know. I don't want to have to redo it.
Oh no, they're coming in loud and clear.
Okay.
What?
I'm over here reading lips. I'm like, okay, there's Charlotte Carter.
Oh.
You're Sean. Okay.
You want me to do you the DJ move? Just
Yeah.
go like this
Better.
and just pull it back off your...
No, I can't hear anybody.
Bam.
Can you hear yourself?
There you go. DJ move.
I can hear it now that Sean told me to DJ move. But like talking to your mic real quick.
Can you hear me now?
Not through
No.
my mic.
Hold on.
Not through my mic. Not through
Your
my mic.
head is big.
How about now?
I hear Sean now. So
Your head is huge.
I turned it up.
Your head is huge.
Okay, I can hear
like
Sean
Joe
now.
Norman.
It's all going.
All right. So this is a
Let's
great
just
break.
Start the whole thing over.
No.
It's fun. Let's start it over.
Really?
Really?
No, you don't have to.
I'm about to say that was a good intro. No.
Plus, Sean is hungry.
Plus, Sean is hungry. So, like Sean said, there were a lot of...
Oh, wait. Is he ready?
I don't know. Okay. What was the last thing you said?
So welcome back, Charlotta. Again, we just want to give our listeners and viewers a guide as if there's something going on, they know where they can talk to, someone they can talk to, or we can schedule for service if there's any kind of need or want for any therapy type services.
Definitely.
So I do have a question. As a community, what are some signs of suicide that are kind of like overlooked that we wouldn't think of?
I mean, I think you definitely have your obvious signs, but one of the things that people tend to overlook is if somebody who was previously depressed, really depressed and withdrawn, all of a sudden has a lot of energy and they seem like they're happy and they're doing well. That is usually a warning sign that sometimes when somebody goes from a downtake to uptake, typically they can be suicidal because now they have the energy to carry out their plan.
And is it different between children and adults? Do you see like their warning signs? I guess that's the proper word.
They're pretty similar. They just may look differently because one is an adult, one is a kid, right? So anger in an adult looks different in a kid. It may just be more destructive as adults. So like anger is a warning sign in both children, or rage and anger it's a warning sign with adults and children. Children can also talk about or posting stuff online, social media. They use social media a lot, posting about suicide, joking about suicide. Definitely something we look for, but it's somewhat the same, but it just is communicated a little bit differently.
Gotcha.
Is there an appropriate time and I know both of you are parents, is there an appropriate time you think would be a good time to bring that topic up? Like if you notice your child's behaviors change or if they start talking out of the normal, is there just a good time to just say, hey, I want to sit and talk with you about this, and if you have any feelings or...
You know, obviously, you're not talking to a 4-year-old about it unless somehow it's mentioned to them, and then they bring it up, and you talk. Depending on the age, you use age-appropriate language. But if you see that your child seems off, they seem different, they seem more moody, they seem more withdrawn, or they seem angry, or they seem really depressed, you do want to kind of have a conversation and say, hey, can you tell me what's going on? How are you feeling about yourself? What are some thoughts that you're having? I'm here if you ever want to talk. And if need be, ask them, like, have you had any suicidal thoughts? But you want to consider the age of the child too.
I like that question. How do you feel about yourself? I think that can kind of open up a big can, and just get them going.
Especially now, especially like our even kids and teenagers. But you know how they're starting to be exposed to a whole lot of things that are different from when we were kids. So you have kids questioning all types of like just pronouns, for instance, how to go about that, and that may cause or trigger someone to go into a depression because they're confused or they don't know. So
yeah, I think too I tend to try to pivot the question, how do you feel, even for adults, because sometimes people don't know how to answer that. So I say, how are you feeling about this? Especially with kids, how are you feeling about yourself? Specifically like school age kids. But you also know too, like 10-year-olds do commit suicide and do, they in their life that happens. And so if it's being talked about at their school, you want to kind of have that age appropriate conversation with them and talk about that.
And then of course, if they're not sure how to have an age appropriate conversation, you want to try to deter from just going at it unprepared. Is that an appropriate way to say it?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, what are some do's and don'ts? Because having a 9-year-old, I feel like next year she's gonna go into middle school, and kids are mean. Kids can be mean. So I know for me, a big don't that I'm having to learn is like, don't assume and don't like answer for her, because I'm always like, you feel good? Okay, we're good. Like, and sometimes I forget to pry deeper. Like, I'm just like, oh, she said she's good. So she's good.
I think as a parent, we know our children, and if something you don't know, just sit down and ask them. Obviously, don't introduce something when they're not even thinking about that.
Right.
Like, your child will let you know. They will give you some level of sign. But if something happens at the school, or if somehow they're watching a show and they talk about suicide, those are times to talk about it. What do you think about that? What does that mean? What do you think about when people in their life having those kind of direct but age appropriate conversations, right?
Right.
I forgot the other question you just asked.
Oh, just the do's and don'ts. So, like, I was saying how I would answer for her. So you pretty much covered it. Like, just kind of diving in a little deeper and not just taking surface, especially when you know your child. So, like, some days I know she's good, but if I could see, like, something's bothering her, I will be like, you sure you're good? Like,
Yeah.
And she's like, Mom, she's too cool now. She's getting in that too cool for school age. Ugh.
And it's okay to sign kids up, of course, for, like, a counselor or therapy if they're unsure of how to approach a child, because some parents still don't know how to approach an age. Yeah,
it's definitely okay to say, I know that they're not saying this, but I just feel like something's off, and I just want to have them come in and speak to a counselor, speak to a therapist.
Because that way you're already trained on how to approach someone depending on the age bracket.
Yes.
And that kind of brings us into, like, for a new patient, somebody coming in, what are, like, some different approaches you would take for a child versus an adult who may have come in because they're having suicide thoughts?
Well, the thing with suicide, we do follow a plan. You have to create, like, a safety plan, period, to make sure that they're safe. And so if it's a child, I'm going to create a safety plan with the parent. I'm going to involve the parent. I believe that you can't really work with children without the parent or the caregiver, foster parent, whoever is involved. They need to be involved, because the child needs to be safe.
Right.
We need to make sure, like, what's in the house, what do they have access to, who's going to be the person that's going to watch them and monitor to make sure they're safe, and if need be, do they need to go to the hospital?
So speaking of having a care plan in place with children and even with adults, what's some way a person would show up for them daily? Whether it's an adult or child, just and we know they're high risk for suicide. Like, how would I be able to show up for my friend?
I would just, we don't want to suffocate the person, but just be there. Just, send a text message, especially if the kid is going to school, let them know I love you. I'm here if you need me. Do a check-in. If it's a friend, send a text message, do a call, maybe set up like, hey, I'm going to call you this time every day and just check in with you.
Have you found that helps? Like if you have a patient and they're like, oh, well, such and such checks on me, and that makes it.
Yes, it does. It does. I have several patients that are what we say is chronically suicidal, and we've decided that they're able to remain safe at home. But part of the plan is then we have to have somebody check in with you, and that helps them because it also lets them know somebody cares. Because one of the things with suicide, obviously, is the depression, the hopelessness, or I don't have a reason for living, and you're kind of getting a reminder that somebody cares.
And you always see that on like I know I read different little blogs and stuff, and even the smallest words help, even if they're not suicide. I'm just speaking on this in general. It's just a good habit to have for people, just being human. Hey, how's your day? Just wants to check on you.
Yeah,
It just makes someone feel somewhat like important or wanted or I matter. So,
and how do you even break the barrier to even, because it's such a high stigma around suicide. So even what are just some ways that you help your patients feel comfortable to even have a care plan? Because, you come in, they may mention it to you, and then you're like, okay, now Johnny and Jane are going to check in on you every Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's just like a high stigma of even letting John and Jane in to let you know that you're feeling that way. So how are ways to kind of just introduce that conversation and break that stigma?
It's different per person. Some people are more open than others. Some people already have somebody set up. What I do is I say if they feel nervous, I always offer, why don't you sign a consent? And if you feel comfortable, I can speak to them. And I can, let them know if they need me to be that voice for them, because it's too hard for them to say. But sometimes I will check in too. Okay. I will call twice a week and check in on the person. Even if I use our St. Hope, phone line, I'll text them, how are you doing today?
Right. So,
and then I also give them the crisis line number, which is 988. We will go down different things to do. But, at the end of the day, everybody gets to choose too, if they want to follow the plan or not.
Right.
But I also have honest conversations of, this plan is to prevent hospitalization. And if for whatever reason you feel like, okay, I can't do this plan, that's okay. We just may need to do the hospital. And I don't say it as a scary demand, but I just say it's because we need to keep you safe.
Now, when it comes to hospital, because I know a lot of people, I've had patients at our location that have heard that word and they like freak out.
Yeah.
Because they automatically assume you're going to strap them down to a bed with like a jacket on, and that's not the case, right?
That's not the case.
Right.
They're given a room. You have support groups and groups in the hospital. I'm not saying that's my first reaction. Let's do the hospital. Like if we can keep you safe at home, let's do that. If we make sure that you have your medication, that you're seeing your therapist, your psychiatrist. If you need to see me twice a week, let's do that. Right. Let's do it whatever we can to keep you safe. And if it needs to be the hospital, and I've had several patients that we talked and walked through what would it be like to be at the hospital and what's the best option for them. And the best option is that they voluntarily admit themselves. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes we have to do a voluntary admission. But if they do, then they've made that decision. And I always tell them that it's actually not weakness, it's strength for you to say, okay, I need more help.
Yeah.
This is showing you are fighting for yourself.
And I think that's just another big stigma too. Like when you watch a movie and people go to the hospital, like you said, they're thinking I'm about
straight
to be
jackets and handcuffed to beds, and you're gonna have people just inject you with things, and you're
gonna be locked away, and nobody's gonna come visit you. You're on complete 24/7 lockdown. Like that's how movies make it seem.
Yeah.
So I think it just goes over
It
goes
doesn't
into
happen like that in real life.
yeah, like education, like educate yourself. And it's really good to talk to somebody who maybe has had to admit somebody and, you know, you're able to actually know the true experience of it
Yeah.
and kind of provide that reassurance. Because I think that's typically what we all need, a little reassurance. I know.
We do, and it is scary, especially if you've never been in a hospital. No, I've had patients that have been hospitalized multiple times, and they've had bad experiences and they've had good experiences. And those patients I talk about, okay, like let's talk about if you need to go, where do you want to go?
Right.
So you can choose, versus the ambulance coming and they take you to the nearest place. Where do you want to go? You know, oh, I want to go to Kingwood. Okay, let's make that plan and go to Kingwood. But I invite them in that this is us making this plan together.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say something, kind of piggyback something Sean said about just like somebody reaching out and letting you know that I'm there. That's like so huge. And there's been documentaries and videos on people who have gone to the Golden Gate Bridge. And the bridge is known for people jumping off and ending their life. And there was a survivor several survivors who talked about if just one person would have just looked at me and said, "Are you okay?" I wouldn't have jumped.
Yeah.
And like, that's so huge.
Yeah.
It's a major impact. Yeah.
Yeah.
So even if I always say that it makes me feel good. I know somebody just because I know we all work. We're extremely busy, so you may feel like, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. But just that slight message, it could be from a family member, a friend, or just,
Yeah.
hey, I hope your week's going well. Like, oh, I'm thought about. Okay, I'm good. Thank
Yeah.
you. You know what? That actually,
Yeah.
Or like you're seen, because I know a lot of times like you're probably like the strong friend in your group. I know that's my role too. Like everybody has to be strong. So like sometimes when your friends are like, "Girl, what's going on with you?" It's like, "Oh wait, okay." Like
Yeah.
I feel
a reset,
seen.
yeah, like a nice little reset. Even when you're not, you know, even going through much, you know, it's just nice to be like, "Girl, something happened." You know, everybody's
Yeah.
going through something. So
It's just so powerful for kids and adults to be fully seen. Like somebody fully sees them. And for some, a lot of people don't have people. And so, like for our adult patients, they may just have myself and the other therapists. That just may be their person until we can build a network for them. But so that appointment is important to them because that's the person who sees me.
yeah, so it's really important that
Yeah.
we keep those appointments. That makes a lot of sense.
Now, for as far as Saint Hope, I know we do have resources as far as counseling. Do we also offer counseling to minors as well?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what's the youngest that y'all typically see?
Well, everybody has a different age range. For myself, we do see young. I actually I was trained and used to see infants up until the age of 18.
Oh, okay.
I know that seems strange.
I know.
But it's a little bit different type of therapy. But I see all ages.
Oh, nice. So what's something that you, just kind of being in this industry a long time, it sounds like you've seen your share of things. Like what's something that you would like to see improvement around just mental health and like the topic of suicide?
You know, I think people, especially in the healthcare industry, not being afraid to just ask a person, are you feeling suicidal? Are you thinking about ending your life? Or just saying, you know, from the front desk all the way to the physician, like, you say you had a lot going on this week, or you've had a lot of deaths, or whatever it is. Like, some people sometimes have suicidal thoughts. Do you ever have that? Like, just asking the question directly.
Right.
Like, just being direct. And people need that. Like, people like want you just to ask directly, because then they can say, well, yes, I am. Or they may rethink, like, oh, wow, like, it's refreshing they asked. Like, maybe really rethink this.
Could that also be taken as a negative? Like if like let's say you ask me that and then they just get totally different. It's like, why would you ask me that? Like, you know,
Like
You can have a
offended.
conversation. It's better to ask than not to ask. Maybe they could, but one of the things they talk a lot about in suicide training is the language that you use, and to be more direct than indirect.
okay.
I know last time we did speak a lot about the person who was thinking about committing, and we kind of wanted to touch topics on the other side of like dealing with somebody, like a loved one who has, you know, decided to take that path, and just like what resources are available for them. Because like you said, you want to still check on that person too, but like not bug them. So like, what are just good ways if you know somebody? I know you spoke earlier that you know, experience friends and just through your work that have lost people through that decision making. Like, do you encourage like still checking in on them, or is it a different approach you take?
Like we typically call the person like the survivor. You mean the survivor? Yes. They have their own therapy. They go to support groups. There's support groups for survivors, but they attend therapy. They reach out to their loved ones because it's hard.
So would you like, is it a different approach? So are you just kind of like across the board? Let me just check in. I feel like that can really solve a lot of grief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mean check in for the person who's kind of being the check in? Like, you know, if Sean's having suicidal thoughts, that, okay, I'm being there for Sean, but who's being there for me?
Yeah. Or let's say Sean decided to take that path and you were Sean's person who checked in. So like, now that you're having to grieve that loss, now who's there for you? Like, what does that look like for somebody? You know,
I would say therapy. Therapy, you know, church, whatever your spiritual community is, or friends, loved ones, like immediately get involved with other people that will be there for you.
Right. And especially like for children who probably lost a parent that way, I think.
Yeah.
Since we're kind of heavily talking about children it's this time around, like I think, you know, adults make decisions that children probably don't even understand. So how would you help a child kind of cope through that?
Well, there's actually a ton of resources for children. There's books as well for children, but also therapy. I know the therapist talking about therapy, but therapy for them. There's groups. There's just being there for the kids and answering their questions and talk age appropriate, obviously.
Right.
But making sure that they are surrounded with love and that their questions or their hurts and their pains are not ignored or diminished at all.
Right. Because I know like a big stigma again is just kind of like, especially in Black households, don't talk about it.
Yeah.
It happened. We're not going to talk about what John did.
We're going to grieve and move forward.
Yeah. And then it's hard for parents because they've lost their spouse and then they still have to be the now primary parent. So, you know, do y'all ever do like the parent and the child together?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Because I would think that would be needed because sometimes the child may, or even the adult may not be able to talk in that age appropriate language, but at the same time, the child may not be able to convey what they're feeling. So the therapist would be like that medium.
Yeah. Well, I'm a firm believer that you can't work with children without the parents. You just, because, you know, they're attaching to their parents or whoever that is. And if for whatever reason the parent is not able to be supportive, then I will work with the parent.
Have you ever had that happen to where you've had a parent that really just didn't understand and
Yeah.
I feel like that would be me.
Before I worked with adults, I worked with children and parents for 15 years of my career.
Oh, wow.
And so I did family therapy all the time. And you have parents who are at a different level of understanding. They've also had their own traumas. And, you know, as parents, you know, our traumas impact us and impact our parenting. And so what I do with parents is I sit with them and I coach them and I talk with them and we role play. You know, okay, if such and such little Johnny's going to ask you this question, how are you going to respond? How are you going to lean in? How are you going to be empathetic? What are you going to do when you're at home? When you're feeling triggered, how are you going to take care of yourself and be there for them?
And when I say like that's me, I mentioned to you earlier my child being 9 and she's advanced for her age. I feel like every parent thinks that about their kid, right? And so sometimes I forget like, oh, she's 9. So like when she's having like an emotional 9-year-old breakdown, I'm looking at her like, what's happening, you know? And I have to remember. So when my therapist is always just like, okay, well, you just learned this yesterday at 34. You think she knows at 9?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
it has the mental capacity.
I'm like,
to
yeah,
like,
you did you got me on that one. You got me on that one. That's so true. So
Yeah.
I think it would be great to have that bridge, like you said, when you don't know how to have the sensitive conversations, because I mean, they're dealing with a lot just on their own, you know, their day-to-day stuff. So that's a really good point.
So Charlotta, just to go back to it, if someone is having thoughts and they don't have a therapist to reach out to, what is a good way they can, what is the hotline number or website information that someone can?
The suicide hotline. So they can just actually Google National Suicide Hotline, or they can call or text 988.
And that's a good resource.
Yeah, it's the national suicide hotline for the United States, and it's free.
And now, when you call that number, those are necessarily like not say therapists, but they're specialists. Like they coach you, and then do they try to link you to someone within your area? Do you know?
I believe they do. They will also, I believe, contact the ambulance or the police if they need to come out and do a check on you, like a wellness check and everything.
Okay.
So they will help you with resources and link you to places as well.
And from my understanding, I know they kind of like sit with you in that moment.
Yeah, they sit with you, and it's 24/7. And they actually have a teen hotline as well. I think some of the teen hotlines, teens actually volunteer and run that as well. So
that's really cool.
So it's more relatable. Do you find that often that kids kind of open up more when like it's a group of kid therapy kind of thing?
Yes. I actually used to. When I was in California, I ran a group with teens, and it was on drugs. And I had another teen speak in the group, and the kids actually opened up and talked about their drug use.
Oh, nice.
And that's another thing too. It's like there's a huge connection with drug and alcohol use and suicide for teens and adults.
Yeah, because you'll have teens that try to like dip out and sneak stuff on the side, like while their parents are at work or at home or at sleeping.
So do you feel like that's like more like an aggressive approach needs to be taken? Like if you catch your children doing like drugs, you're not gonna, like your parents' first reaction is probably like, what? Like, just super probably high strung emotional, because they're still your baby at the end of the day, right? So it's kind of like past the let's talk about our feelings, so like if you did have somebody who that's like their choice of drugs, but they are experiencing some suicide thoughts, like how would you handle that approach differently?
I mean, obviously as a parent, sometimes we just have our reactions, but can you come back and repair and sit and talk and say, I'm sorry for my reaction, but this really scares me. And I want to know, are you okay? Yeah. And have a conversation. Still have consequences. There's no drugs allowed in my house, or, this is not allowed, or, this is the things that we're going to need to do. I'm going to have to monitor your phone or whatever. But typically, even though kids may fight that, most kids want structure. Like it actually helps them feel safe. So the approach is still the same. You still may just have consequences because of the drug use.
Right.
But you still need to have empathy and love and really work on not putting on a whole bunch of shame, because shame and suicide are like best friends.
That makes sense. And I will piggyback on that. Kids love structure. You think they want to be like the what's that show, that cartoon when the kids was running around with those shoes, the Thornberries?
The Flintstones.
No, the Wildberry. The
Wildberries.
The Thornberry. But
the Thornbirds.
Yeah, the ones. They were running around. The Thornberries. Yes, they were running around wild, and you just thought, like, as a kid, I was just like, I want to run around wild, but like, I really appreciate the structure growing up. Like, hands down. Because
it lets them know that you care.
In a weird way, right?
Yeah, it lets them know they care. Obviously, I'm not talking about like a militant parent, but just, healthy parenting. Like, these are the expectations. This is what I'm doing because I love you. And like talking to the kids, explaining to them why. Yeah. Not just do what I said.
And that could be a whole nother topic.
Yeah, it can be.
I could talk about that for days.
Part three. So this is a very, very heavy topic, and I know you already provided the resource, so if you want to just provide it for us one more time, if anybody out there needs having these thoughts or knows someone who's experiencing something similar to what we discussed, what's that number again?
That's 988. And also you can call St. Hope, and even if, maybe you don't know if you want therapy, as therapists, we will just talk to you and just walk you through the process as well.
Okay. So thank you for that resource for our listeners. And as always, we like to end with, do you have anything that maybe we didn't get to touch that you want to share with our listeners?
Yes. I wanted to talk about specifically like our male population and suicide. Men typically use much more lethal means and are let's say, successful at ending their lives. And a lot of that is because just the male culture and the expectations of men, being independent, being strong, not relying on other people. So they tend to suffer in silence, and especially even men in rural areas. And just want to encourage our men out there that are listening that there is help, that you don't have to be alone, that it's okay that you're suffering, and that there's people here that want to be there with you.
And it all goes back to that "Are you okay?" message. That is
Yeah. A simple question can change the whole
the course of someone's life choices. Charlotta, I want to thank you so much again for coming and sitting with us and discussing this topic. For everyone out there, thank you for listening, watching on social media. And again, if you have any questions or if you want to schedule an appointment to either meet with Charlotta or any of our counselors here at St. Hope, you can call 713-778-1300 or visit our website at offeringhope.org. And just remember, here at St. Hope Healthcare, you're more than just a number.